Before I start, there are a few links that I want to share before I begin this paper. A number of them linking to Voddie Baucham's talks on biblical manhood and biblical womanhood, as well as two talks that Paul Washer did, one on biblical manhood and one on biblical womanhood. I also would recommend the video which inspired this article by Dave Cullen, aka Computing Forever. While he may not be a Christian himself, he has found himself agreeing with them on many points. Cullen's work on feminism and social justice warriors can be found on his main YouTube channel, Computing Forever. See also Keith Thompson's video on the leftists' immoral views. I am not against a woman having a career, and I believe they should look after the home and children when they are married, but I won't go into too much detail on that, as I have already written a paper on this subject of women in the workplace. I have become more acutely aware of the cancerous and dangerous toxin that is infecting social media, entertainment, politics, education, and other spheres of the world, coupled with backing from liberals in those fields with a pretentious, self-righteous, and outright insulting definition of morality that want people to conform to their ways or be called racist, misogynist, homophobe, transphobe, Islamophobe, and of course the most recent one, Trump supporter. Not only has the church been negligent or even outright accepted these people's skewed and twisted emotional rhetoric, the opposite is true to an extent in the unbelieving world. More and more unbelievers, whether it be Dave Cullen, Sargon of Akkad, or whoever, people who don't even believe in Jesus are waking up to the realization that this cancer is destroying society and the family, regardless of leaning to more egalitarian views or not. I first became aware of the social justice warriors, or SJWs for short, when I started listening to the podcast group back in 2015 known as Midnight's Edge, when they were talking about Fant Four Stick, a reboot of the Fantastic Four movie franchise, as an example of an audience that was hoped to support the film. The video in question discussed the aftermath, which you can find in the description below. Viewer's discretion at one point, because there is a joke about ripping off the privates of Ben Grimm, which, to be honest, is distasteful despite the information presented by Andre, Kevin and Troll in the Dungeon. If you're listening to this, Andre, this is not an attack on you or Kevin or Troll in the Dungeon. The video from Cullen that started this article was a case in Canada where a rape claim was made against a man who was protesting his innocence, and because of the judge's ideological bias, he accepted the rape claimant and granted her case. See the link to his video in the description below. It is disgraceful, to be honest, to allow this bias and prejudice against men creep into the courts. Fairness and justice is what the courts should be dispensing, and not examining the facts and ascertaining whether the man should be acquitted or sentenced accordingly is disgusting and despicable. See my article on false witnessing in the description below. While we are not under the Torah, there are principles found to use when building a case against an individual, that the charges must be based on facts and have multiple witnesses. False rape claims are one of the many problems in the West, and men are rightly terrified by them, because when one is placed on the sex offender registries, the countries that have those laws, they have restrictions placed on them, and it's hard for them to get employment, or retain their jobs, or even their home, and of course their families suffer abuse and scorn as a result. And even after their removal from the registries, when their sentence is finally finished, they carry this stigma with them for life. Thankfully, there was a case some time back where a man was actually saved from prison by evidence on a recording device, which had the woman who accused him convicted instead. There are feminists who actually defend this practice of deception regarding rape claims with the point, well, that case may have been proven false, but it makes us aware of the issues of rape in our culture. What? The police are not going to take rape claims like that seriously if you keep using deception to falsely imprison innocent men and ruin their lives. It's wickedness like that which prevent real rape claimants from coming forward. Rape is taken very seriously in Western nations and is wicked in the sight of God. You devalue helping actual oppressed women with these lies about innocent men. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually encouraged people to rape and get away with it, because there are no severe consequences for them to reap. If anything, feminists who use false rape claims are part of the problem. They're supposedly trying to stop and making people aware of these issues, while also making the misandrist claims that all men must be taught not to rape women, because apparently all men are predators, which is absurd. Third wave feminism is destructive to both men and women. If a woman wants to be a housewife, you don't stifle that, you let her go do it. The idea of a housewife being oppressive to women is a ludicrous lie. And in case you're wondering, no, the 1950s housewife is not biblical Christianity. I recommend reading Rebecca Merkel's book Eve in Exile for more information. And David Paulson once said, God didn't intend chauvinism, but he did intend chivalry. You want to see true oppression? Live under Sharia law, or go to a country that also devalues women. We also have the destruction of the entertainment industry, where nowadays women must be strong, independent women who don't need no man. A phrase I'm sick and tired of hearing, to be honest, and I was familiar with the phrase in 2015, but I can't remember when I first heard it, but that's besides the point. There's not only that phrase, but also the idea that men are to be portrayed as incompetent or completely emasculated. Of course, there are also the following which have one thing in common in fiction, and they are all called misogynistic. 1. A woman who doesn't fight. 2. A woman who is captured. 3. A woman who is rescued by a man, but apparently can be rescued by another woman and rescue a man herself. And 4. A woman who settles down with a man. There is also a test that Dave Cullen mentioned in his Star Trek Discovery review, a series I have yet to watch, that the opening is designed to fulfill what is called the Bechdel test, which basically asks if a movie fulfills the following criteria. 1. It has to have at least 2 named women in it. 2. Who talk to each other. And 3. About something besides a man. This is one of the most pathetic, pointless, shallow, and unnecessary examinations of a film or any fictional work. If this is designed to write off a work of fiction, it is a terrible way of doing so. Back in 2016, when X-Men Apocalypse was released, 20th Century Fox apologized for a poster of Apocalypse strangling Mystique after the backlash the poster received. Of course, there is a context to what happened in the film, and Apocalypse would have done that to anyone. It's sad, on a side note, that when X-Men Apocalypse is used as a means of attacking Yahweh, I'm not even kidding about that, its first trailer actually had Apocalypse say, "I have been called many things, Ra, Krishna, Yahweh." Of course, in the actual film, they changed the dialogue slightly to him saying Shin Elohim instead, but that doesn't change the actual intention and meaning of what Apocalypse said. And the sad thing is, people don't complain about that, but when a woman is being strangled by the villain, apparently the film is misogynistic, which is completely absurd when you watch the film in context. Our priorities have really taken a turn for the worst. And while we are on the subject of Marvel, specifically its comic division, but not so much the movie division, as Kevin Feige, the Marvel Cinematic Universe's architect, is not virtue signaling, as far as I can tell. Many users on YouTube, on Facebook, and elsewhere have highlighted Marvel going into the identity politics, and are trying to appeal to an audience who are not interested in their work to begin with. Thanks to the SJW appeasement, Marvel comic sales have dropped low, and the user Diversity and Comics has done reviews of comics which have been infected with this cancer. One of the comic book series I have picked up was The Superior Spider-Man, which while I got used to the series, and the series got better as it progressed right up to its great conclusion, it didn't have the things that many individuals have complained about with respect to the SJW problems, at least none that I could detect because I wasn't aware of the issues at the time. It's one thing in fiction for a woman or non-whites to take centre stage as a main character. That isn't a problem, and that is fine. What many take issue with is using the genders and races as a license to force feminist and social justice propaganda down their throats. Let us not also forget telling white children in schools about white privilege, and telling them that they are responsible for the slavery of black people in the West. Of course, if these vile hypocrites telling children these things were consistent, they should tell black children that some of their ancestors were slave owners of their own race themselves, and they wouldn't tell the black children that because they would be labelled as racist by their own for saying that. It is a wicked thing to tell a child that they're responsible for the sins of the past when they don't even understand these issues. And of course, we cannot forget the wickedness of gender fluidity, where children are taught to accept that there are billions of genders, which as many know is absurd, as well as flying in the face of what biology has shown, not to mention the suicide rates are higher among the transgender community in comparison to the non-trans. Children do not have the understanding to deal with these kinds of issues, and opening children up to these kinds of practices is evil. Teachers who allow this kind of sexual deviancy to permeate their campuses to children should be themselves put on the sex offenders registry. An issue can be highlighted, but not at an age where someone doesn't have the means to process properly how immoral it is. We also cannot forget open borders and allowing individuals in without the proper means of checking them, and people wonder why terrorism has arisen in their country more and more. Immigration control is there for a reason, and the only immigrants that have a right to be in the United States, and this also applies to my own country of the United Kingdom and other nations, are legal immigrants, ones who have proven themselves to be honest, hard-working people who are willing to live in a society different from theirs. Illegal immigrants, liberals love calling them undocumented, which is pretty much saying the same thing, who may possibly be an embezzler, terrorist, sex offender, or benefit thief, or even if they work hard but violate the visa that they were given, which may not permit them to work in the country, are the ones who should be deported back to their country or detained. Ancient Israel, I think, had a better immigration system than some of the countries in the West. See Exodus 22:21, Leviticus 19:18 and 19:34, Numbers 10:32, Deuteronomy 10:19, and 23 verse 7. In the curses uttered in Deuteronomy 27, verse 19 says the following, quote, "Cursed be anyone who perverts the justice due to the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, and all the people shall say, Amen." Unquote. Does the Bible say, treat the foreigner well in your midst? Yes, but any foreigner who wanted to live in Israel had to live by its rules. The words in question are not a license to allow every Tom, Dick and Harry into the country. There is a reason border control exists. It's for safety and security of a country. I won't deny there are refugees who need help, but they must be examined to see if they have or had a criminal past of some kind, or connection to a malicious organization. They must also have the appropriate documentation to work and live in the country. If there is nothing wrong, they are free to enter the country, but they must abide by the laws of the country. You cannot just let them in without any grounds to do so. Not every single person is a refugee. When atheists, non-Christians, who have some influence from Christianity, whether they admit it or not, recognize the problems with a feminized culture, you have a serious problem in your midst and have to do something about it. Not only has this cancer of feminism destroyed men for many reasons given in the video, again by Dave Cullen, which are quite correct, it's destroyed women too. I've already said earlier, the entertainment industry has been ruined by these SJWs who should never be appeased and should be ignored because, surprise, surprise, they cannot be pleased. Ever. They will never be content. The far left, for far too long, have bullied conservatives, shamed them, and attacked them. Leftists, not all of them, are the ones destroying their countries with open borders, dehumanizing of people who differ with them, a false righteousness that borders on pretentious virtue signaling, as mentioned earlier in this video, shaming white heterosexual men, because apparently that's not sexist or racist at all, though it's just another form of racism, and falsely proclaiming this narrative of Donald Trump being an oppressive bigot, despite the fact that he isn't such a person in context. I don't like his locker room talk, and the number of divorces and remarriages is a failure from Donald Trump to recognise the sanctity of marriage, but I don't see how Trump is the despot people make him out to be. While I don't agree with Donald Trump supporting homosexual marriage, or even allowing abortion under the circumstances of rape and incest, abortion is still murder, he hasn't taken away people's rights from doing those things. This is nothing more than lies being thrown at Trump, as well as the lies that he is racist against Mexicans and other races. Are you kidding me? He is only kicking out illegal immigrants, not the legal immigrants who have earned the right to be in America. And yet the Americans wanted Hillary Clinton, not all Americans, I should make clear, a woman who shouldn't have been running for president and should have been imprisoned long ago for her crimes? Really? If you don't like either candidate, fine. I would have preferred someone more virtuous and righteous as the president, but still, have an accurate reason why to dismiss either candidate, and observing Trump even occasionally, the man has common sense, despite his rash and sometimes childish approach of dealing with his opponents on Twitter. And I am not saying this to disrespect Trump. He is 55 years my senior after all. I initially saw him as a bombastic windbag, but over time I've warmed up to him. I feel sorry for the next generation of children who have to live with this satanic social justice garbage. They're never going to mature or grow, and both future generations of men and women alike are going to be subject to this refuse and poisonous brainwashing. Oh, but you Christians brainwash children! No, we don't. You liberals and social justice warriors are the ones who abuse children and turn them into immature and infantile adults who haven't grown up, need safe spaces, and can't face the harshness of life. Not to mention the social justice agenda is allowing for the endorsement of wickedness that would have been condemned a long time ago. You liberals are brainwashing children into sexual perversion and allowing practices which were taboo 50 years ago and more. Explain how biblical Christians, not the Westboro Baptist Church or the like or cults, but biblical, Bible-believing Christians, whether it be David Paulson, John MacArthur, Voddie, Baucham, Paul Washer, Keith Thompson, and others brainwashing people. They are not, and would express disgust, and do express disgust, with the brainwashing of the human race by the devil, who himself is the father of lies. I think it's God's judgment on the West that all this is happening. Oh, but we fight for their rights, equality, and love and diversity. You are the ones who hate, not love. Oh, really? Why is it okay to be racist and sexist towards white heterosexual men, but not okay to be those things to the genders and races you claim to fight for? There is no such thing as racism. You are not guilty of reverse racism. You are guilty of racism, period, liberals. It also doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. Sexism is not allowed. No, I don't say homosexuals and trans people and people of other religions and races cannot work and have a job. They can, but allowing you in the workplace doesn't mean you have to agree with each other on anything. With respect to homosexuality and transvestism, why do you want to endorse practices that have been shown to destroy the family and destroy a person's body through not only physical disease such as AIDS and HIV, as well as higher suicide rates? I don't care if they claim to love each other. The homosexuals cannot reproduce a child with their union. They are in love with a mirror image. There is nothing to complement the relationship or birth a new human into the world. You have to adopt a human from a person who is willing to have the baby to be a quote-unquote family. Even adopting a child, it doesn't matter about the noble intention of raising the child. They are raised in an environment where the gender roles are, to be perfectly frank, skewed, and promotes the sin of homosexuality. To quote the words of James White, the emasculation of men and the masculation of women is evil. See my response to Dr. Mona West on Does the Bible Condone Homosexuality? I am sensitive to the fact, and should be sensitive to the fact, that not all feminists are horrible monsters. They do have a legitimate concern about women's rights, but unfortunately, the loudmouth SJWs are the ones who have the loudest voice. Some people have even joked or stated that SJWs spend their time complaining on Tumblr. I am also aware that there are those who are left-leaning who, while they disagree, do allow opposing opinions to challenge them, which is commendable. We should have both dialogues, not monologues, and if SJWs continue to dominate the playing field, conservatives will lose. The field should be leveled. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.